Welcome to Amateur Hour CX, a podcast on the state of cycling from our point of view in the grassroots ranks, or pretty much whatever strikes Eric's fancy based on who he could trick to come on the show today. I'm Mark Walling, and here's your host, Eric Schillinger.
Hello world, we're here with Rhys Niesen. Can I introduce you formally as Rhys Mays? Because until like 2 days ago, I didn't realize that you changed your name.
Yeah, but it's not plural. It's just May, like M-A-Y, is now my old name. And still my business name.
Wait, it's not plural?
So yeah, Rhys May, and then Rhys May Jewelry is still my business and metalsmithing name. And then I got married to Rhys Niesen, so now I'm Rhys Niesen, and I have two names that are like exciting to spell now. It used to be that my first name confused people, and then I was able to say M-A-Y, like the month, but no longer.
If you want to call me Eric Schillingers to sort of even the score, that's okay. You can do that.
Yeah. This morning, my phone reminded me that I had a podcast with Eric Cylinder, which I thought was pretty.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Because I think I had like voice entered a reminder, and it's put cylinder.
The 1/4 of a horsepower that Eric Cylinder makes when he rides with his heart rate monitor. So you have a jewelry business?
I do, and it's actually what I went to school for. Okay.
Wait, let's just back up then.
Yeah.
Where did you go to school? Jewelry School of America?
So the University of Georgia has an art school, the Lamar Dodd School of Art. And within that art school, one of the majors is jewelry and metalsmithing. And
really?
I shit you not, there is like a room full of tree stumps with anvils on them. And like
that's completely awesome.
Like a line of torches, and like it's amazing. It was a deal where like I was gonna be a drawing and painting major, and I took the intro to metals class, and I was like, I'm getting class credit and I'm holding a torch. I'm in. It's great.
That's spectacular.
Yeah.
And then you were in college, but you were actually like a blacksmith.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not a blacksmith. A blacksmith is something different, right?
Well,
they like make
blacksmith is ferrous metals, so like iron and steel, and I am non-ferrous metals and on a smaller scale, so I solder metal. And I technically smith things because I definitely hammer things on an anvil, but it's different because they're not hot while I'm hammering them. There are like nerdy differences you could get into, but
okay. So now this is like. Break down like the course of your week. How much time do you spend hammering something on an anvil?
So that has recently changed. I went full time sort of by accident, just like moved cities and didn't really get another job in 2014. So from 2014 until like a month ago, I was solely supporting myself with the jewelry thing. And it was just sort of a balance of like, however big my training week was and how many hours I could find to be in the studio. But it got to the point where the like always financial pressure was becoming like a creative strain and a like everyday stress strain. So I took on some part-time work at this bakery, just running their farmers market booth. And then through word getting out that, oh, Rhys is taking on part-time work, my friend Adele, who works at Northampton Bicycle, was like, hey, we really need a person at the bike shop. So I started working at Northampton Bicycle last week, and I'm going to log some big hours there this week. So I have like a 50-hour work week going on top of my, so I'm working at a bakery, a bike shop, and doing my studio and riding and racing my bike right now. So
how many hours are you riding right now?
Right now I'm doing I'm trying to just get like 10 hours a week pretty consistently.
Okay. So by the time you're done with work and training, which is basically a part-time job also, you're looking at like 60 hours this week. Mm-hmm. Why are you talking to me right now?
It's great. I'm sitting down. It's great. Yeah.
Because this is the least demanding thing you've had to do all week.
Yeah. But honestly, I really love it so far. I like getting up early and riding. And then, the bakery thing is super fun. I worked in a restaurant in Athens while I was in school as a Taqueria del Sol is the restaurant, and I was a bartender and food runner there for like 5.5 years, which the other day I definitely almost answered the phone at Northampton Bicycle, like Taqueria del Sol, this is Rhys.
When I worked at CK Cycles, I used to answer the phone CK Cycles and Fine Dining. And it confused people very much. CK Cycles is the local like Albany bicycle store that is probably the equivalent of Northampton. What is it? Northampton Bicycle Store?
Northampton Bicycle, yeah. But so far I'm really stoked about all of this because I can, they mostly need someone for the summer hours, which is perfect because I'll get more busy with racing in the fall. And it's sort of like I'm being my own financial backer. There's a certain amount of like creative freedom. I was like, okay, I need to be able to charge a little more for head badges because I'm doing these custom head badges for bikes and I want to be able to go into like insane detail, and I have to charge people enough money that I'm not like doing it for free.
So you can just make somebody a head badge, basically?
Yeah.
How does it get stuck on the bike? Does it just stick on? Is it like glue, or do you like
I
fix
ship
it?
them to people there's like this 3M outdoor mounting tape that is like what car decals are stuck on with, and it seems to work very well.
If somebody wanted to get one of those, how much does something like that cost? Is it the sky is the limit?
So yeah, I just raised it by $10. It was a big deal. So now I think they're $178, and I have them on my Etsy, and that's because it's like a 2.5 inch tall by about 2 inch sort of oval, and the one I was working on the other day is 3 squid tentacles that are holding chemistry beakers, and there are flames on the bottom, and it says Squid Bikes because it's going on a squid, and then it has like a night sky background that's like tiny moons and stars. So they get pretty interesting.
It's moments like this that I wish this wasn't just like an audio recording, because my face dropping down to the floor with my open jaw based on that description.
If you can send me a picture of it, I can put it in the show art that'll show up during this discussion.
Oh, cool. I'm also pretty much like a compulsive Instagrammer, so a lot of those head badges I put pictures up on my Instagram.
I know, it's hilarious.
I gotta get on the Instagram. I think I have an account.
You do.
Somewhere.
Wait, so okay, well, maybe we should I don't know that we should back up exactly, but maybe we should continue down our tangent.
Yeah.
So you aren't from Northampton, Massachusetts.
So I am. That's a plot twist. So
wait, plot twist. I was
born in Northampton, Massachusetts. Then I lived in further western Mass in the Berkshires until I was about 10 years old, at which point my mom, I guess a couple years before that, my mom, a former professional ballerina, got the REM Performing Artist Scholarship to University of Georgia Law School, where she went. And in the process of doing that, like, completely changed our lives. Like, we were living in a house that like got boarded up in North Adams, Massachusetts. And then I moved to Georgia to join my mom. And it was actually a weird thing as a 10-year-old, because like I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I went to the Waldorf School of Atlanta and had like Pottery Barn stuff in my house coming from like, I lived in an apartment with my dad and my brother in Lenox, Massachusetts, where there was like the cord to a vending machine that went outside, like came in through my bedroom window kind of deal. So it was different and I loved it.
That's okay. So you live in Lenox and you actually, it sounds like you lived in a convenience store. I'm not exactly sure.
Basically.
And then your mom is in law school or becomes a lawyer ultimately, and you move to Georgia to live with her. Correct. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then when you got down there, like, I'm a lawyer, so I know sometimes like what it's like to be in law school and then what it's like to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Then
and a bike racer at the same time.
And a bike racer. And then, so you're in Georgia, you're going to the Waldorf school. Mm-hmm. And did you think you were going to come back to Northampton, or were you just like, okay, I live in Atlanta now?
No. So I was a Southerner for so many years. I lived between Atlanta and Athens. I guess I didn't really move to Athens until I went to college. So I was in Atlanta for a while. And
do you know Outkast?
No, but I did go to a Big Boy concert once. That was one of Run the Jewels' first shows, and Big Boy and Killer Mike pulled me up on stage, and I have this picture of like me dancing with them at the Georgia Theater. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
My like nerdy excitement that you can see in the picture like actually makes it not cool. If I could have like pretended like it was not a big deal, then it would have.
Yeah. Like you didn't keep your cool at all. You totally freaked out.
I feel like keeping my cool, but so I ended up first visiting up here because of Cycle Smart Cross Camp.
Okay, so you came. That was literally going to be my next question. Well, I guess actually that's not my next question. My next question is: so you're in Georgia, you're rocking out with Big Boy, and then you're like, bicycles. This seems like a good idea.
So bicycles started literally because I totaled my car on the way to art history class one day, and someone gave me a bike for free, and I didn't buy another car for 7 years. So I got this like old Univega gifted to me, and I ended up taking it to Sunshine Cycles in Athens and turning it into a single speed, which I didn't know what single speed was. The gears were like, didn't work and my idea was that the bike would be like feather light without all of those, cogs. So I said, can you make this into a single speed? And they were like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll make you a single speed. And I was like, great, check. And that was my commuter for a while. And I went to my first cross race because like my friend who worked at the bike shop and some other people were doing the Georgia Cyclocross Series races in t-shirts. They had like t-shirts that they had rattle cans sprayed and they were pinning numbers to them. And that was like their team
nice
outfit. And it seemed to me that, I guess from that picture and the fact that they were talking about drinking a lot of beer during the race, it just really felt like welcoming to me. I was like, I was not an athlete. I was not like, I didn't like really go on bike rides besides like cruising around Athens, getting to work and to school. I considered my like 5 mile there and back every day to school to be like kind of a big deal as far as mileage.
Yeah.
So I just showed up to a Georgia cyclocross race, like on my single speed steel commuter bike.
And we're just like, I guess I'll give this a whirl. I'm going to drink beer and wear a spray painted t-shirt.
Yeah. I think by that point they had upgraded and they got a local donut shop, Ike and Jane, to make these kits that I still have it. It's like worn to pieces, but it has a picture of a donut with 2 wrenches crossed on it and like frosting graphics like dripping down the kit. It's very cool.
That's
I really want to bring this back. I would buy it.
Yeah, why can't we have a donut kit?
It's so cool. But I think that there are pictures of that era, and I'm racing in the Doughnut Kit. I have like teal Vans on, and not even hold fast straps. What are they? Power grips, because it's like a diagonal strip that goes across your foot.
Yeah, the power grip. I'm familiar with those. I've never actually. I don't think I've ever seen them in application. Yeah. Just like in the performance bike catalog. So
that was my setup, and I have shown people, or like pictures have cropped up because I have like so many ridiculous early cyclocross photos that actually aren't from that long ago.
Yeah. So what year is this happening?
2010.
Oh yeah, that's not early cyclocross. I have bad news for you.
Yeah.
Cyclocross was already like as serious as a heart attack up here.
I mean, for me in my career, people assume that was like years longer ago than that. Yeah.
I see. So you've come a long way in a brief period of time, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I guess so. And like 8 years doesn't sound that that brief, but like literally that first.
That doesn't sound. That doesn't seem short. 2010 is 8 years ago.
Yeah, but people ask when I started racing, and I say like 2013 because literally before that I was showing up to pound beers.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. There's like racing. There's people who are showing up because it's a little bit of a party scene. There are people who are showing up because it's like a lot of a party scene. And then there's like people who are like showing up to race, but they come to race because it's a party scene. And then there's people who like don't like that it's a party scene and they're just racing. So I want to, that's interesting. So you said sort of basically that you weren't really coming from like an athletic background, but you really weren't coming from an athletic background.
I ran cross country in high school, but my best 5K time was 24 minutes, and I got like the most determined runner award, which means that you like show up and try hard, but you're slow as shit. Like,
yeah, they're just like everyone else who was slower than you quit.
Yeah, I would like show up every day. I'd be like running on the weekends, but like that was my best time. I just like I didn't grow up doing sports.
Okay, I take issue with that because if you were running cross country, you were doing a sport, even if you don't have to be running
as a little kid. I feel like by high school, it was like the people who were good at sports had been like athletic kids. And I was like Harry Potter trivia, like Lord of the Rings, like spoke Elvish with my friends. And yeah, we definitely dressed up and went to the Lord, like when the Lord of the Rings movie came out.
What did you dress up as?
So my friend made me like this beautiful elf dress with, you know, like the giant bell sleeves and stuff. Yeah.
This is amazing. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I just wasn't. It wasn't something I did. I didn't. So yeah, when I went to a bike race, it was not. It wasn't a surprise that I got dead last by a very long shot. Like, I think the other Cat 4 racers were going to lap me.
Okay, so you started this and you were, you know, you were last. You were in my all of my experience doing this, that there's kind of two categories of beginner racer. There's the beginner racer who, like, you know, did crew in college or something like that, and they come out and they just basically win by 5 minutes in their first race, right? And you're like, where the hell did this person come from? And they're like, oh, they're a freak of nature endurance athlete, and it just happens that pedaling is now the choice of how they want to use their aerobic capacity, right? And then there's pretty much everybody else, which there's varying degrees of this because obviously everybody can't be last. But basically,
but I can honestly attest that I was on such the far end of that like it was. I remember vividly my second race. There was like a mom with some young kids posted up by one of the barriers, and with my power grips, I was having trouble like getting my foot out the right way, and I would just fall on my face like every single lap. And like, I'm like, I think I was like second to last of that race, and I was pretty excited about it. And I would come by and she'd be like, you got it this time. Just get your other foot out first. You can do it. And like, wham, like every lap. So yeah, I was like beyond abysmal at first.
Man, that just, it immediately makes me remember being about 14 years old and having been cut from the high school baseball team, and the track coach being my first period like global studies teacher and saying I should come and do track, right? I was tall. I'm obviously tall. And he said, you could do like high jump and hurdles. You'd probably be good at that. And the first day setting up the hurdles and him showing me how to jump over them. And for some reason, it was just me. I don't know. It must have been because maybe I probably was joining the team late because I'd been trying to get on a baseball team and hadn't succeeded. So it was just me, and he's showing me how to jump over the hurdles. And he says, okay, now just run over the hurdle, like do this. And I just literally crashed into the first hurdle and then fell over, like just like you described, fell on my face 100%, got up, ran at the second hurdle, crashed into the second hurdle, 100% fell on my face. Third hurdle, same story.
The facial expression, I imagine, is like akin to Al Donahue's facial expression when I first got up here. Like, bless him for having patience with me.
So, yeah. Okay, so you start... So, because because we're doing this women's clinic, right? Ultimately, you're going to be our coach for the women's clinic. And one of the things that is very interesting to me is your own experience of being bad at cyclocross. So many people who are good at cyclocross or good at anything, really good at sports, they sort of are good at sports, good at racing, like kind of automatically. Now there's huge variations of how good is good and like what you actually do and what's automatic. And I don't take anything away from athletes who work very, very hard to be at the top level of the sport. But a lot of people never were like, I don't know, was Stephen Hyde ever like last in any race that he did? I mean, without having like a huge disaster, like he tried bicycle racing and he probably did pretty good at it, right?
I'm like a cyclocross interview podcast nerd, and it kind of like irks me how many, I guess it irks me, but it also made me feel better to like hear how many of these people who are just good were like, I don't know, like Amanda Nauman was a swimmer, and like Steven rode bikes a ton and did BMX and like just has crazy aerobic capacity. Like Ellen's been riding and racing bikes since she was like an infant. There are all these things that I learned eventually that I was like, okay, like this, there are reasons for these.
Yeah, the people you're competing against, some of them have been doing this already for 15 or 20 years. Emma White has been racing. She's what, like 22 years old? She's been racing for 12 years or something, you know?
And not that I am on the level of those people. I think I am now competing in races with people who I'm excited if I get a top 20, very excited if I get a top 20 in a UCI race. So.
Okay. So you have this experience of going to maybe your first race, you come in dead last, your second race, you're beating somebody, but you're literally falling on your face at the barriers every time you go. What made you go to your third race?
So I think it took a while. I think that I'm like scrappy. So I was like, all right, like we're done for this season, but we're going to learn some things. And I think like I started trying to practice. I think that was around the time that I started to make myself a practice course at a park in Athens. And I eventually got joined by a really, really great squad of people in Athens who are really good at bikes, who like just guys who did cross. I remember my friend Rob Simpson would be there. He was like the guy who would show up and win the Cat 3 race and then win the single speed race in Georgia Cross. And he was like super sweet to me. I remember him telling me like after one of those first races where I got last, he was like, I can see it. Like, you're super determined, like, keep at it. So there was just a really great group of guys, including eventually, I think, like, Frank Travieso. He's like, I think he was on the podium for, like, Speed Week or USA Crits, or I should know what it is. But he's, like, a pro road racer who, whatever year, it was, like, 2 years ago, he, like, won all of the Georgia Cross races. But, like, he would come out and, you know, come out to the practice sessions in the park, and they were all just really sweet to me and would help me and give me tips. And it was like, I never felt like a super outsider, even though I was like probably a liability there, but they were great. And I got super excited about it. I was just like, Georgia cyclocross is very like, you see a lot of the same crew at the races. Like, you know, the women's Cat 4 field is like 7 to 14 people. So it was cool. It was like a family. And I just, I got into this idea of like in between a couple seasons of being like, okay, if I like ride my bike a lot and practice these things, maybe I can be a little better next year. And like, I still didn't make the connection of like, stop taking hand ups and then maybe you'll be faster. But that came around probably like, when I say that I actually started racing, I say 2013, because that was the season that I had really started like making a habit of practicing. I wanted to go faster. I really wanted to like set out that season wanting to get upgrade points so that I could be a Cat 3 and race in the 1, 2, 3 race. I actually spent all of my money, like literally all of my money on a carbon bike because I got on a podium. They had like a race in Savannah, Georgia, and I got third place. And I was like, it was like I won the lottery. Like,
I'm sorry. What were you still riding your single speed bike?
No, at that point I had sold a moped and bought a entry-level Giant. It was like the TCX, but it was the TCX2. It was like the lower end model. But I definitely fucked up and ordered a size that was like gigantic on me.
Oh, you like an extra large? That would be a good choice.
I think it was their small, but it equated to like a 53. And I'm like, yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah. Giant, they get you with that. It's like, we only have 3 sizes and none of them are right.
So I think that I rode that for like just a little while. And like, I'm not like a fussy person. Like, I'm definitely the person where you could move my cleat halfway across my shoe and it would take me 3 days to notice, unfortunately. But that bike, I could just, even compared to my Univega, I couldn't turn. So the day that I got on my first podium, I remember going to like the Food Lion in Savannah, Georgia, and getting a $500 money order, leaving like $1.63 in my bank account, and buying this old carbon Elan cyclocross bike with ancient Dura Ace on it.
Yes.
Like, it was like definitely already like kind of fucked, but it was perfect. And I was like elated and it was fantastic. And so it was kind of like a dream bike to me. And that was like even more fuel on the fire. I was like, I show up to the Wednesday practices, like rain or shine. I remember going to the like Athens cyclocross practice in this park on my birthday. I think it was like my 22nd birthday, 23rd birthday, something like that. And it was like pouring down rain at 7 a.m. on my birthday before my double shift at Taqueria. And I was like really stoked to be there practicing cyclocross.
That's awesome. That's spectacular. Okay, so that's, let's see, that's the end of 2013, basically? That's like when...
Yeah, so by the end, I'm looking at my cross results right now. By the end of 2013, I had enough upgrade points because I had been on a couple podiums, and then I won so the first race I won was the Georgia State Championship race. So I got a state champ jersey, which was also like, I think I called my mom crying. And like, this is like, I was an adult. I was like, and my mom is the most supportive person in the world, but I called her and said that I won a state championship bike race in my category. And she said, honey, are you sure?
She was like startled by this.
Yeah. She's like, it wasn't like an attitude thing. Like, are you sure?
Like, did you hit your head kind of check?
Yeah. So that was like super exciting to me. And then I guess it was in between that season and 2014 was when I moved to Atlanta. I went full time with the metalsmithing, and I was like, well, now that I can make my own schedule, that means that I train like a crazy person, obviously. And to try to like control myself, I hired a coach through CycleSmart. I guess I should also add, it was that summer after 2013 season that I went to CycleSmart training camp. I traveled 1,000 miles to go do this training camp. I was like, I know Northampton's cool. I grew up in that area. I'm going to like, I put all of that on credit cards too. I had no money and I was like,
you were living the Cat 3 lifestyle. That's the way to do it.
I was a very serious Cat 3. Yeah. I remember like I got this sweet Airbnb that was actually a couple of these wonderful women who are Zen priests. And it was like the coolest Airbnb I've ever gotten. But I remember being on speakerphone with the bike shop in Atlanta that I actually had my studio in at the time, Loose Nut Cycles. They were instructing me on how to put my bike back together from flying with it. And
is this still the Carbon Elan?
Yeah. And I just like, I had no idea. I remember being like, these spacers, like, do I put those on under the fork or like above? Like, I didn't know. I was super, super clueless.
How much do you take your bike apart and get it in the box? Did you like totally disassemble it?
So yeah, it was actually I think it was a case so that I didn't have to think that's still in the like attic of that shop somewhere. It was an Oru case, because it was like a 49 centimeter bike, so that I could get away with lying and saying that it was not a bike. Which I now know that you can just do with a box, but, you know, being very excited about the whole thing, I was like, I need this special case so that I can fly with my bike for $25. Yeah, it was all very exciting.
So you get up here and you do cross camp and you meet, you meet Adam Meyerson and you probably meet Alec, right? And then
and Jacob Fetty had just started coaching me. He's a Cycle Smart coach. So I was like, just starting with him as a paid, like, I was paying him to coach me. So that was also a step that I took as a brand new Cat 3. I was like, I need a coach. It's getting serious. And he was amazingly helpful and super patient. I remember, like, we were talking about how to record data, and it was like, oh yeah, I have this running watch. I just strap it to my handlebars. It's great. And he was like, do you have a heart rate monitor? I was like, no, I don't really wear it. I think I was like using the running watch to like look at my miles per hour, and I considered that like excellent training data.
I'm traveling 14 miles per hour today.
Jacob really started from scratch. And he was just super helpful. Like, I had to learn all about like what zones to ride in and like what all of that meant. And it was just, it was all new to me.
So in a lot of ways, though, you're like a clean slate. Like, a lot of people probably come to them and they've been doing this in some, you know, in quotes, serious way, and they think they know a lot about it. It sounds like he almost could just be like, okay, just do these things. And you would be like, all right, it seems better than using my running watch to just track how fast I'm going.
Yeah. And I remember a lot of what he had me do makes so much sense, because like it was a lot of skill things, which is like, if you can't, you know, if it's going to take a while to figure out the like super athletic part of racing, like you can be good at turning your bike and handling your bike, and that'll get you further faster. And then the other part comes later, which is like that whole thing is still in progress for me, but he kind of like set me up for this great jump start. I had that Elan set up with, I think I had some wheels on it that were set up like ghetto tubeless. Like, so I think that they're actually,
when you say ghetto tubeless.
So if you have a wheel set and tires that are not meant to be tubeless, what you do is you put a ton of tape on the rim, and then I think my tires were more like stands filled. They're more like liquid filled tires than actually sealing air in there. So you put about like 2 cups of stands in each tire, and then you're good to go.
You're good to go. And the performance benefits of this are, if you need to frost a cake, you have extra sealant with you? I don't understand.
I was trying to learn to ride trails on my cross bike, and it was like I was so bad at it that I was just instantly getting flats. So it enabled me to ride my bike in the woods and learn how to tackle obstacles such as small pebbles and tiny roots and sticks without injuring myself or immediately flatting, which at the time a flat change took approximately half an hour. So it would have just like ruined my whole ride for the day. So it was like, props to the guys at Loose Nuts, because I think at that point they were not only like helping me with my bike that was already falling apart at that point, but like, you know, they're finding the like throwaway parts. It's like, oh, you can use this. This is great. And like helping me with my Crank Brothers pedals and all that kind of stuff. And they set up those wheels for me. And then one of the mechanics, Tyler, was giving me a ride to the trail, we're in Atlanta at the time. So you had to drive like an hour outside of town to get to like a good trail to ride on, which I've heard things have changed and they have better in-town trails now. But he was pretty much like, okay, I'll meet you at your house at like 6 a.m. and we can go. And I was like, all right, we got like, you know, an hour and a half on the trail today. So I was just consistently showing up to my training and got better at it. It was, stands filled wheels, stands filled tubes. It's great.
So there's definitely sort of like there's a learning curve, right? Like you start to do this and it just seems maybe like it's really fun, or it might seem crazy. One of the things that that we have some like data on is that we see a lot of women start, and we have fields that in the race series that we promote, we have fields that are like sort of like what you're describing, 7, 8, 10 women. But sadly, what happens is it seems like we have 5 to 10 women who start as Cat 5s every year, and then only one of them comes back to be a Cat 4 or further on up the hill. Do you have any idea why that happens?
I've seen it. I've seen women come in from other disciplines of cycling and sort of not have the same experience, or like they came in with different expectations. I've also seen people like, I guess, when I was a Cat 4, there wasn't a Cat 5. So I would see women like win the Cat 4 races instantly because they were like fit, and then move up and race Cat 3 and be like, no, I don't like this.
Yeah, they move up and they don't have the skill set, and then they get smashed by Cat 3s or better, right?
I have never experienced this, but I imagine that strong people who like off-road bike handling is not their thing. I imagine that it would be frustrating to know that you're a strong person and have like good results on the road, or like you're a good runner or whatever, and then come to a cross race and have to turn and handle your bike more and then be getting dropped. Like I bet that would be frustrating.
Yeah. I'm in the same category of not that good at pedaling and better at turning, and I imagine that would annoy someone who, I know it does, because I've been the person who is beating the guy who could ride up the hill faster than me every single time.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have to fix that a little bit. We have to help these people so that they come back for the second and third year.
Yeah. So I think like a big part of what like Jacob helped me out with, and what Cycle Smart Cross Camp helped me out with, and eventually Jam helped me out with, is like, okay, like you're super enthusiastic, the engine is not there yet, and you can improve immediately by practicing technical skills. So like I rode the hell out of trails. I like did all of the drills like on Christmas Eve morning at 5:30 a.m. in the rain. I'd like practicing my cyclocross drills,
doing your drills,
so
right,
that I could like pick up those extra seconds. Yeah.
Wait, we're jumping around in the chronology a little bit, so I don't think we ever got to. You were at the last we checked before we digressed into like why what can we do to like get more women racing. It was you're at cyclocross, you're at Cycle Smart Cross Camp, and then you're starting to take it seriously. Maybe at that point you're really taking it seriously, but you've gotten to where you're doing it seriously. You're no longer with power straps.
I'm starting to learn what it means to take it seriously, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's a great way to put that.
Yeah.
Well,
so it was
how
great.
did you end up in Northampton?
So yeah, Cycle Smart Cross Camp year 1. I learned things. I got, it was like good homework. And I went back to Georgia and I trained my butt off. I raced in 2014 as a Cat 3. Again, super enthusiastic. I had an opportunity through a friend that lives out there to travel to Jingle Cross, and I went out and raced Jingle Cross as a Cat 3. And that was really fun because like the Georgia fields were so small, and I went there and raced against like 40 women, and that was crazy. I went, finished out. I think I won the Cat 3 state championship that year, in 2014. So the year after I won the Cat 4 state championship, I won the Cat 3. And
that's great. That's why you're like saying that, and you're like kind of like, I can tell you're like smirking when you say it. Is it not cool to win the state championship?
No, it's very cool. I guess like the level of cool that I thought it was like probably until I moved up to Northampton 2 years ago, those jerseys were hanging on my wall. Like I was like lottery winning level of excited about those.
It might not be that like cool. You might be right about that.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with that, but the significance that I placed on it was like, this is a pretty big deal. Like I was a big deal. I went up again to cross camp that year, and I'd been getting training from Jacob all year. I was probably improving with my fitness a lot. And that year, is it that year? I went to cross camp for so many years. Yeah, it must have been that year that Jacob was like, okay, like you should stay and hang out with Jam for a couple days after cross camp. And I was like, what? Okay. And
that's cool. That's like the after party of cross camp.
Yeah, it was like, and I was so excited. Like, I was the most thrilled to get invited to that after party. And I specifically remember this mountain bike ride. I had my cross bike up there, but it was like, we went on a mountain bike ride that I was on a borrowed mountain bike, and like Scott Smith was on the ride, Stephen Hyde was on the ride, and Al and Dave Wilcox, actually. And I have a scar from it. Like, we went to these trails that were super rocky and super unlike the hard pack that I was familiar with in Georgia. And I was just like eating it over and over and over again. And I like was bloodied and bruised. And I think like, later that day or the next day, we went to the like sand pit of death, and I like got sand all up in those wounds. This is a learning experience.
Horrible experience.
I loved it. I loved it so much. And then, so I went back to Georgia. I raced again that year, 2015. I did a ton of races. And all this time in Georgia, when I was living in Atlanta, I was racing for Loose Nut Cycles, where I had my studio space, and I helped, like, I was like, you should have a shop team. And my friend Chris, who runs the shop, was like, that's awesome. So we made these like fantastic, like camo and orange kits. They were the Loose Nut Cycles kits. And I think we found like Busch Beer had like cans that matched our kits, and we thought that was really cool.
That's a spectacular coincidence.
Yeah. And then 2015, we made kits that were blue, and they were both polka dotted and striped at the same time. They're pretty great. So I raced again as a Cat 3, and I was in 2015 for Loose Nuts. And I was getting on some of the like 1, 2, 3 podiums as a 3, which was very exciting. I was gathering my upgrade points. And I went to Asheville Nationals. And I did not qualify to race elite, so I raced my age group. I raced single speed. I did the industry race. I did the team relay, and I did the donut race.
What was the donut race?
The donut race, which this is the only race that I'll ever contest the results of because it's very important to me. The person that claims to have won did not eat any donuts. You know? Okay, so there was a donut pit stop, and you had to do, it was a partial lap of the wonderful Asheville Nationals course, and you had to stop and eat as many donuts as you could and then keep riding. And I think it was max 2 donuts per lap, and each donut and lap counted as a lap. So you could do like, I think I did like 4 laps and ate 6 donuts.
10 laps altogether.
Yes, exactly. And then, there were people that were just like, oh, and they just did laps the whole time. And I was like, no.
No, I think if you don't, so it's okay. Someone did 11 laps, but didn't eat any donuts. Yeah. They like missed part of the point of the donut race.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair. I think the winner has to have eaten at least 1 donut.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even be an option not to eat a donut. You should have to eat a donut just to start the race.
Exactly. But I was racing all of those races in Asheville with my Loose Nuts teammate, Matt Reeves. And it was amazing because we were totally like the Bad News Bears at Nationals, even though like we had we were Ritchie sponsored. So we had like beautiful matching like Ritchie Swiss Cross bikes. But it was, I believe, pretty unexpected that we were like, I was on the extended podium for my age group race. Like I was like 10th in the industry race, and I was doing okay in the single speed race until I flat it. Like, and he did well, and it was like, oh, like we're pretty cool. We had a great time.
That sounds like a great time.
Yeah, I felt very accomplished. It was also at Asheville Nationals that Jacob really saw me race in person for the first time.
Oh, I see.
Which was very cool because we, like talked on the phone all the time and like did stuff through Training Peaks, but he wasn't, at Georgia cyclocross races. Oh. And so he was pitting for me at Asheville Nationals. And after I finished the race, he goes, "Hey, good job. Like, has your front wheel been on backwards all season?"
Oh, no.
The answer is yes, it was.
That tread pattern doesn't matter,
No, I think like I guess the tread probably would have been on backwards, but yeah, just like I put the skewer in backwards. It was all
everything backwards.
Yeah.
So you weren't running disc brakes, it sounds like.
No, I was actually running mini V brakes that were held together, not held together, but like the screws were epoxied in.
Oh, sweet. The structural epoxy brakes.
Yeah. Super sick.
Super sick. That's like a high level upgrade when you're using epoxy to hold your bike together.
Yeah. And then it was Asheville Nationals, and then it was really that February that I started getting interesting text messages from Jacob one day when I was like, I had gone on my ride in the morning and I was working on jewelry stuff in my bike shop, my studio within a bike shop. And I think he first said something weird like, are you at all opposed to moving up north to race cross? And I was like, no, I'm kind of thinking of like living in a van by the river and racing cross up there anyway. And like, I really was like, I had written in like iPhone notes, like go back up for cross camp and stay. Like I literally had like a spot. There's like this swimming spot by Al's house. And I was like, I could park a van there and sleep there. Like it's fine.
This is a great idea. You're like the Chris Farley of cyclocross at this point.
Yes, I am. And Jacob said something about like, he said something vague about comparing my power numbers to Ellen's. And I basically fainted. And then I got a call that was like, do you want to race for Jam? And I think like, I literally...
I don't think so. That sounds bad.
I think I literally said to my friend, Elliot, who like knew me from the Athens days, I was like, in my wildest dreams, the Jam Fund would call me and ask me to come race for them. Like,
is that when the Cheshire Cat Mukunda Feldman hybrid popped out of the wall and said, come and race on the team?
So I was so excited about all of this that poor Al, like, I think he was just like kind of making plans. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to race for the Jam Fund. I am so excited I sent him like 3 emails in the space of like 10 minutes. And I remember calling back Jacob and I was like, Al hasn't said anything yet. Like, am I in? Am I actually in? And he was like, stop sending emails. Like, calm the fuck down. Like, it's fine.
You're only reducing your chances.
Yeah. But basically when Al and I like set up and talked, maybe he was in Belgium at the time. Yeah, we talked and he was like, I'd love to have you on the program, but we want to have people like in the area. So like, would you be willing to move up here? And I was like, I'll put my shit in my car right now. So he was like, chill out. Like, we're talking about like this summer if you move up. So I literally like made plans to get someone to sublet my apartment and moved in June. I put all my shit in my terrifying Volvo and tied my mattress to the roof and drove to Western Massachusetts.
No, that's not, you didn't park the Volvo down by the river and just sleep on the roof of the car on the mattress, did you?
No, there's like a pretty great community of like Jam racers that have found cheap apartments in the area. And this guy, Rhys Niesen, who raced for Jam, had a space available in his house. And so I moved in, and
Rhys Niesen, this person has the same last name as you now.
Gosh, it's weird. Yeah.
Oh, what a coincidence.
That's crazy. But Trent is also...
Crazy. So that's how you met Chris? You like moved up here being like, I just need a place to stay. And he's like, okay, weird Volvo lady, you can stay in my house.
So we had met each other at Cycle Smart Cross Camp. And like a few years back. So we like knew who each other were and were like kind of internet friends. But I was very excited. You know, I think like he had just raced in China and that was like his first UCI race. So we were like both, I think he was like Jam development at that point, but we were in a similar spot and both excited about racing. So it was like a perfect place for me to live.
And you never moved out.
I never moved out. So I still live here with Chris and with our other roommate, Trent, who also races for Jam.
So you have like a jam. This is not the only jam family house that exists either, right? There's like numerous jam family houses, right?
Yes.
Actually, isn't that seriously? That's Jeremy, Alan, Mukunda. Like that's how the whole thing started, right? Didn't the three of them just like live in a sketchy apartment and race together?
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've heard. I swear it's not a cult.
It's not a cult. I don't think so. I mean, I've lived in more than one sketchy apartment with other people who were bike racers, but none of us still live together.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it a cult though. It just means it's normal.
Yeah. So I came up and immediately started getting my ass kicked so hard by jam people, like so hard.
So do you think so racing in Georgia? Now, I a friend of mine who actually used to race with Al in the Joe's Garage team, Nathaniel Ward. He raced up here. He's from the Albany area, and then he went to North Carolina. And he's really polite, but he sort of reports back that maybe the scene's not quite as developed. You know, maybe it's a little less competitive. Did you get that flavor coming up here? You all of a sudden were like, "Ooh, I'm in the deep end of the pool here," or was it just like no big deal?
I think to some degree, like sometimes the smaller fields would be like a representative sample. I think there were some very fast women who came out. I know this because some of them will like occasionally do a UCI race, and they're like not bad.
Yeah, they're not last when they're in the UCI field. Sure, they're actually good.
Yeah, but not like as the racing is not consistently at a high level like it is here in New England, and just so many more people show up. I mean, like the local races are like big. Like I remember the first big local races I did were Midnight Ride and Night Weasels. Yep. And with my USA Cycling points, I was like on the first row and there were like 90 women. I was like, oh my God.
That's a big ride. That's a big race, right?
So cool. Yeah. So I had a lot to learn, and I also didn't really have an understanding of like I talked about being okay at turning and kind of being behind aerobically. That is very much the case. And I didn't necessarily understand that like the results that I'd gotten in some of those Georgia races and like Asheville were because they were very like mountain bikey courses.
Yeah.
So any situation where I would be in a race where there's like a straightaway or it's sort of a grass crit, I was like,
so like the Northampton, the Cycle Smart race in Northampton is not your ideal course layout.
Yeah. Well, for that race in particular, I decided that I needed to make the awards, help make the course, run the Jam Fun sausage tent, and there was some other thing that I took on. I like didn't sleep before that.
Did you race, or did you just take on full on doer responsibilities and not have to ride a bike at all?
I think I raced the first day and did abysmally, and then I raced the second day, crashed immediately, and sobbed in the van for a while, and then like got out and started serving people sausages from the tent.
These are important lessons. I have adopted a very similar racing strategy at most of the events I do.
Yeah.
Crash early, cry in a van for a little while, and then grill meats.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, it was really cool. Like, Jam got me out to my first UCI races. Like, it was insane. My first UCI race was the C1 at Rochester.
And that's jumping right off the diving board right away.
Yeah, and like Rochester is not a super technical course, and like I nerded out and looked back at my like results so that I could report years properly for this, and like I'm proud of it. My first UCI race, September 10th, 2016, I was 27th out of 33. And like I definitely barely missed finishing the lead lap, but like that was a good race for me.
Yeah.
So much so that I was like super dead on day 2 of Rochester that weekend. And Al was smart. He kind of saw that happen, and he was like, okay, like this is where we're at for the rest of the season. We're going to have you do for WCI weekends, we're going to have you race on Saturday. And then on Sunday, your job is to show up, kit up, and do pre-ride laps with Jack and Scott. So I was doing, it was always funny because the like men's men's UCI pre-ride window is right as the women are lining up. So people would see me in kit on day 2 of a UCI race and be like, hey, what are you doing? You're supposed to be lining up. And I would be like, I'm hanging on just Jack Kissenbert's wheel for dear life, like busy here. It was a super fantastic way to learn and to pick up on, because they're both excellent technical riders. So it was sort of like more data for me to apply to like help me get those extra seconds in races. Because I think it's just like, I've still got a couple years to go before I really have an aerobic engine. So I have like a notebook full of, I literally have like from 2016, I have diagrams of corners. Like I have Gloucester, I have like notes on like what my tire pressure was. And I have like these little like dotted line diagrams of good lines and corners on the Gloucester course.
So for tire pressure, like what do you normally run? Like 100 PSI?
Totally. Yeah. You'll never flat.
I don't even know if that's true. You might flat because you like crash so horribly.
Thankfully, I had the tire pressure pretty dialed from going to CycleSmart camp. Because that was like I drove 1,000 miles to go learn about tire pressure, so I knew all about it.
Well, so now the good news, we have to do like a series plug, and I the good news is people who are in your shoes, instead of having to drive 1,000 miles to go to CycleSmart camp, if they just come to the NYCROSS races, just like you did when you started going to Georgia series races, you're going to be at those races, right?
I have CycleSmart camp info. I raced with Jam for a year and trained to race another year but didn't actually race. I have a lot of information and I like nerded out about that information. I literally have notebooks that are like race day tire pressure and what I ate that day and notes on pre-riding the course and what the weather was like. And,
what's the best thing that you ate before a race?
Oh God, I have a barfing problem in races. I go so hard that I barf. So I have to be very careful about what I eat. I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better about like dialing back my efforts a little bit, because it turns out that vomiting in a race slows you down a little bit.
Yeah. Vomiting is not a way to go faster. But sometimes eating a meatball sub is just something you have to do.
I'm an oatmeal eater. I love oatmeal. I like to make them like not boring oatmeal. I put like chia seeds in my oatmeal and a ton of New England maple syrup and fruits. So, and like sometimes I make
maple syrup,
savory oatmeal.
Maybe like a clam chowder oatmeal. That would be a good thing to eat right before a race. No? I don't understand. I think were you actually barfing just when I said that? Was that
a little
pause?
Bit.
I was.
Pause for a second. Yeah.
Oh, Mark, you're still here.
I am still here.
Hey.
I thought you had to go take a nap or something. Like I was sleeping before we started. Oh man, Al won the first cyclocross race I ever promoted. Like
cool.
A zillion years ago. Al was like, let's see, Al and I are about the same age. I think he's like 2 or 3 years older than I am, and he showed up at this race. It was the same day. He might remember this differently. He might not remember it at all, frankly. But I remember him showing up. We didn't know who he was. Like nobody knew. He wasn't like he wasn't like internet famous Al yet. He was just some dude on a development team, right?
Yeah.
And at the end, when he won, he was like, "Yeah, there's this race called Gloucester today, and I figured all the good riders would be at that, so I came here instead so I could get some money."
That sounds like that's great.
So he skipped Gloucester and went to a race that was promoted by like, a 22-year-old dude that was like 14 people at, and then he won like $75 and went home. That's kind of my strategy with like what UCI races I'm doing this year. I'm like, okay, when do all the World Cup people leave? Okay, check. I'm gonna start. That's when my UCI season starts. You only like the Sunday C2 races, and especially the races that aren't in NECS.
Yes. Yep.
What's that race? There's a race that's going to be on is it on Cape Cod? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Okay, so I can now say that I am a former winner of a race that will now be a UCI race, because there's
Did you
a race
win that race when it wasn't a UCI race?
I did, and it's called the Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross.
Yeah. I knew it had some name like that.
1, 2, 3 win. So even though it had that name, it was like a pretty legit, like, local, like, non-UCI level race. And they had, like, one of those big, like, stand things over the finish line that has, like, the race name and stuff and, like, the lap time clock. And it's, like, literally...
I want to buy one of those.
But we all know that if you don't have the thing over the finish, you don't have a cool race.
Yeah. Well, it's literally, like, the only... It was, like, my first, like, 1, 2, 3 win. Like, I'd gotten, like, second in some of the, like, Georgia races in the 1, 2, 3 category, but it was my first, like, win as a Cat 2. And so Al has this picture of me, like, I was, like, definitely afraid I was going to crash, but I, like, posting up through the little wooden thing.
Through the wooden thing.
But I was bummed because I went to I wanted to, compulsively Instagram it, and it says the Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross. And I'm like, it really takes away my credibility. Like, damn it.
It's not the worst name I've ever heard for a cyclocross race.
Yeah. I mean, that's like probably what I would name a cyclocross race.
I would name it the Pretty Rad Cyclocross Festival.
Semi-rad.
Sort of rad.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems like I forget what the other new one is. But yeah, or maybe it's Nittany is back. There are a couple
Nittany's back. There's the Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross, which you could go to, and you get called up at that. You should legitimately be announced as former winner, Rhys Niesen. I'm saying your not name right, and I'm saying it plural. This is awesome.
Rhys Niesen.
Rhys Niesen.
But yeah, every call up I've ever gotten, they either mispronounce it or think that I'm a guy. And then if I have full kit on, like if my tattoos are covered, if I have like leg warmers and stuff on, they think that I'm like a junior boy. I think the first year that I raced, or like there was some race that I like traveled up for with one of my Loose Nuts friends, and they like did the women with the junior boys as a category, like the Cat 3 women and junior boys.
Yeah.
And they were like sizing me up, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, they think I'm one of them. Like,
I think I'm one of them.
I've also been in mountain bike races where like some of the men's field will pass me, and they're like, "Good job, bud." And I'm like, I'm a girl.
Yeah, but I mean, that could be like a a gender neutral bud, right?
Bud.
I call my daughter Bud sometimes,
Okay.
and I sort of am like smirking and I'm like, oh, that's funny, but I still do it.
That's fair.
Also, she's my buddy, so it's okay.
Yeah. True.
Other than, okay, wait, what are we going to call the clinic?
Okay, so I liked, maybe because I just couldn't decide, but I liked Tricross with NYCROSS, the women's Devo Clinic, which is basically both of your names like put together. So I don't know if that's too long. But.
It could be a little bit long, but it also rhymes.
That's not a good
thing. I love Tricross with NYCROSS, but I also like...
What? What's wrong with that?
To be fair, I did read that out to Chris like last night at the table, and he was like, "Why?" that's
Yeah, I said it was the worst thing. I was like, it was the only name I thought of, and it was also very bad. I acknowledge. I didn't say it was great and we should use it.
In Jam Fund Racer Chris Niesen's opinion, why? Why? No,
Well,
great.
The good news is, if you're a man who's already on the Jam Fund, you are not our target audience for this.
That's fair. Yes, exactly. But yeah, I like the idea that the title would announce that it is a women's beginner clinic, because that's like, I really want it to be this thing, and I want to be a resource for women who are like just starting. They're like considering registering, and I want it to be like, yes.
I want to get people. Okay, so, and I mean, really, I don't want to force it on you, but it's like, it's sort of like if you, that's exactly right. People who are considering registering, and then up to people who are like, I did that and it was kind of fun, but I also feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, and maybe I'm intimidated by that a little bit, like secretly, Yeah,
and they just want advice from someone who's not... The term mansplaining is like overused, but that's also like such a thing. Like I think I said this to you when you first suggested the clinic, that I think that there can be like a female racer who like kind of knows what she's doing and has been riding bikes, and there's like a Cat 5 guy who like, because of physical strength, can like finish a lap at the same time as her, but like doesn't know any better than she does at all.
No, probably knows worse.
Yeah. But like, because he can like sprint harder, he thinks that he has information to give her. And a lot of times that information is wrong. And I know from being thankfully when I was a very beginner, I had all these like pretty good racers to ask who I really like trusted in Athens, Georgia, because it's like a cycling town. And I think that as a beginner women, you get a lot of information thrown at you from different places, and it's hard to like filter out sometimes, and it can be overwhelming. And it can also be tricky to ask questions. And I think that that's why like I remember going to a women's like how to change a flat night forever ago in Athens, Georgia, because it was just like every guy that I'd ever asked how to change a flat was like, oh, this is easy. And I was like, okay, it's easy. Yeah, this is totally easy. Whereas like in a group of women, I felt totally comfortable being like, how the f- do you do this?
I have a hard time doing it. Please teach me how to do it without being embarrassed.
That's one of my duties at my new bike shop job. And I'm sort of terrified for the day that someone is like watching me. So I'll be like sweating, trying to do it faster. I don't know. But it's really not that hard to do, right? You just first you take the tire off, then you get your 55-gallon drum to catch all the sealant as you're taking it out. Then you're good to go. I like there's some YouTube video that's like the Katie Compton how to change a flat, and it's like
hand it to Mark.
Go into the pit and get your other bike. But honestly,
that is the best way to change a flat. Yeah. There's no question about that.
So I did a couple years back, I think it was like right before I moved up to join Jam, through Atlanta Cycling Fest, I did a clinic day that was like, I think it was a 2-day thing. And like day 1 was women only and day 2 was all beginners. And day 1 actually got rained out, and we like sat in a coffee shop and ate donuts, and they asked me questions. And it was this really great sort of like forum. And I had women who were like, they basically felt like they weren't qualified to show up. And I kind of think that that's a feeling that more women might have than men. And I think like I've heard people talk about like, oh, like men ask for pay raises at a job with like half the qualifications, whereas like a woman won't ask until she has like double the qualifications. And that just may be some weird like cultural thing. But I think
there's definitely like there's complicated gender and cultural things that play out here. Absolutely.
But I had these women who were like, I don't have the right kind of bike. And I'm like, bring whatever kind of bike you want. And they're like, I don't have one of those like kit things with logos on it. Like I'm not sponsored. Can I go? And I was like, first of all, like click on the internet. Like here's where you can buy those. Second of all, like you can come in yoga pants if you want. I try to spread the word that women can really like show up whenever they feel like it with whatever they like, run what you brung. And that it's 100% encouraged and okay to like, just come try it. See if you like it. If you want to come and you want to start like dialing stuff in, then I can tell you how. If you want to come race on your commuter with racks on it and in jeans shorts, like that's awesome. So I think that bike racing and cyclocross racing in particular can exist on such a range. And I think that there are so many women who don't realize that, and so many racers who don't show up because they feel like they need to be more serious in it. So I always tell people, I told a woman at the bike shop the other day, she was like, oh my God, you race bikes? How does that work? And I was like, well, they have the entry level categories, and you show up. And if you're like me, you're terrible at it. And then you eventually learn things, you get better, and then they make you move to the next category. And it's fun because you're always learning things.
How do you go from saying that conversation in the bike shop to having that woman actually come out and give it a go?
I sort of test the waters of like, would you do that? And if they're like, oh, no. Like if they're like completely dismissive, I'm not going to like push somebody. But I definitely like, I told this woman about bikereg.com. And now I'll be like, well, come to try cross with NYCROSS, or whatever we end up calling it. But yeah, like, I think that's a really great thing for, like, as a person who likes to get people out to cyclocross races, like, doing these clinics, I'm able to say, hey, person, like, my cousin Leah was a rower. She's like Leah May. She lives in Albany, and she's athletic, but she doesn't really do a lot of bike stuff. So I'm going to try to get her.
I mean, she should be racing NYCROSS races right off the bat. Your cousin is our first target audience member.
She's hopefully going to be one of my, like, guest riders. So I'm going to get her out, get her registered, and she'll probably borrow one of the loaner bikes, which I think is a very exciting part of the program.
Yeah. I didn't realize. I didn't know if we talked about that or not. I was about to say that there's going to be loaner bikes. Do you know how that's going to work?
Because I think, like, basically, while I like to tell women that they can bring whatever they want, I think that it's really great to be able to try a cyclocross bike, because I did way back. I, was riding my single speed steel, whatever, commuter bike, and they had Cannondale bikes for testing out. And I demoed one, and it was like the first time that I rode around a cross course with gears. Was it?
And you were just like, oh, well, this is a new thing I'm going to have to have.
Damn, this is amazing. Yeah, so I think that's a really great opportunity for women who are like, I want to show up. I have, whatever bike that I feel like is going to maybe not be ideal. Then it's like, it takes away that barrier. It's like, okay, here's a bike. Come on.
Yeah. And now you won't even need to bring your bike that you don't actually probably need. I think we're working on the back end of this. It's not all that exciting to talk about on the internet, but I think we're going to have, you'll be able to reserve a bike. So somebody who is committed, they've registered on Bike Reg. When they register on Bike Reg, they're going to get a question like, do you need a bike? What size bike? And then, eventually they won't sell out. That's not the right way to put it, but they'll be all reserved. And then we'll be able to tell people, okay, if you're coming, you got to bring your own bike. Yeah. But should we're good.
So exciting.
It's very exciting. We'll probably screw it up pretty bad.
Hey now.
But no, it's also a great compliment, like the program that I'm sort of making this year with, like, trying to get guest riders, which is basically like, I have a couple that are, like, already racing, but I wanted to get people out that are brand new. So that's, like, a great way I can be like, hey, if you come to NYCROSS, not only will you get to do your first race, but we'll, like, hang out and talk about stuff. So,
and then maybe one day you can be a guest rider, and then you'll be like the next person who's, you'll be like the guy, you'll be like when, you emailed Al, get ready, this is going to happen to you now. You're going to be the person who gets like 5 emails in 4 minutes about being on your team, because someone's going to be super pumped. Hopefully some 20-year-old woman who has just been exposed to this and falls in love with it is going to want to like do anything they can to be on your team. I'm not mocking it. No, I'm really hoping this happens. I think this will be great.
It was funny. I put up my, like, program website, which, like, I have a website because I have a Rhys Made Jewelry website. So I just made, like, a sub website that's my, like, cycling website. And I...
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is always the thing we have to do. If people want to go to your website, what is it? rhysmadejewelry.com/cycling. So I put basically I wanted to make a program where I can race bikes with my sweet jewelry logo on there, and that I could do as many mentorship programs as I can get my hands on, and devote a lot of my time to doing that, and also racing, and get new people out and be a mentor. Because basically I was like, man, it'd be really cool to sponsor some other women riders, but I don't have any money, so, like, I do have my time. So I put the guest rider application on there, and the first 2 applications that I got were what are now my first 2 guest writers, because they're amazing. And there's actually a blog link on my website, and I did interviews with them. They're both super interesting people. They're both, like, I know them kind of through, I guess I met Anna at Cycle Smart Cross Camp, and I met Jess at NCC Kids Cross, and then hung out with her all week at Ellen's, like the
Ellen Noble Youth Cyclocross Quest. And they're both JAM grant recipients, and they're great. So that was very exciting to me that those were my first two. It was like, I was the excited person. Like, I could barely get the emails out fast enough. Like, yes, oh my God, you're official guest writer. Yay.
I'm going to fill out your guest writer application right now. I can't talk.
Rejected.
Yeah. Rejected.
Do you see where it says noobs welcome?
I'm not really a noob.
Eric.
I just suck. That's different.
Eric, how many cross results points do you have right now?
642.48.
But I'm looking forward to coming back to Uncle Sam, like
full bore.
Yeah.
Well, that would be exciting. I hope that you can win our series. That would be very cool.
Ooh, that would be very awesome.
And then you would go into the pantheon of people who aren't Jenny Ives who've won our series, which is like one person. Actually, you know who's won it? Bryna Blanchard has won it like the last few years. She's been winning it a lot, but
from what I recall at Uncle Sam, she was winning by a lot.
Yeah, so that's actually a thing that I want to sort of address. So the at UCI races, there's like plenty of women. Women show up and there's a big field and it's competitive. But you sort of touched on this when you were talking about the races in Georgia too, and we were talking about it up here. The local women's races are not necessarily very large. That you get sometimes 10 people, 12 people, 15 people. 15 people would be like a good sized field for like a 1, 2, 3 women's race.
Yeah.
And then you end up with these unfortunate but sort of unavoidable like large deviations in people's ability level. So you get like Bryna winning by like 5 minutes or something. And sometimes you don't get that competitive racing. You get people spread out all across the course. And my hope is that
I think that is because the small field in that case is a representative sample. Because I think that at UCI races, that it's at a high level, but the top 10 and then the top 5 are at even higher and higher levels. Like the gaps get bigger as you go up higher.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the gap is only one person at a local race with 15 people. The gap, you know, at a race with 50 people in it, there's 5 women who all have that gap and they're racing together. And then the next group is 5 more women, and the next group is 5 more women, and down the hill you go, you know?
Yep.
Well, so am I crazy to think that by trying to foster that 4-5 level racing community that we're going to actually eventually end up with better racing at the 1, 2, 3 level, because you're going to have more people sticking with it and funneling in and being Cat 3s and hopefully becoming Cat 2s instead of going back to running or rowing or whatever they were doing before they tried 3 cyclocross races.
And I think that if I can meet my goal and sort of like give them that tool of like the aerobic engine takes a while, but here are these technical skills that are going to give you a big jump quickly, that will help.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like ride a mountain bike, race a mountain bike, and also like here are the things you can do on a cross course. Those things just are like, I'm excited to even talk to them about like, I think it helped me a lot when I was in Athens to like make myself a practice cross course in a park. You could do it in a yard. You could like, I think just having a place to practice cyclocross, because you think about like people ride mountain bikes, people ride track bikes, people ride on the road. Like how often do you get to practice cyclocrossing outside of cyclocross, you know? So I think it's actually a common thing. I definitely notice it in the UCI field where like the top end of the field, they're excellent racers and excellent bike handlers. Most of the rest of the field are women who make a ton of power who don't need to be that good of bike handlers because they make so much power.
Oh, so I was going to say it's one or the other. It's not. I was going to say, okay. So yeah, the top is obviously excellent technical skills, excellent fitness. The middle's not excellent fitness. So in the men's racing, the middle is a combination. Some people can pedal real hard, some people can turn, but you think in the women it boils down to the difference that makes you the top level racer is skill, because everybody at that level's got some fitness. Yeah.
Well, I think like it's maybe like the aerobic fitness is like the bottom of the pyramid. And if you like put the skills on top of that, it can go a long way. Like I think like Natalie and I are a great example. Like we both started on jam, and she is super strong, but had never really ridden on trails. And like she started riding on a mountain bike and just practicing riding on trails and, you know, jam training and doing all of the technical training that jam does. And she made a huge jump. And it was like, she didn't even necessarily need to get stronger. She just needed to learn how to turn. And like, she got a bunch of UCI points last year.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the racers that I'll hopefully get will like benefit from that hugely.
That's our hope.
Yeah.
But so you, in between actually all of us racing and training, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but you make jewelry, but what are you actually making most often? Is it bike stuff? Is it jewelry stuff? Because it's like you make head badges and stuff, right?
The only really bike related thing is the head badges. And then because the cycling community is awesome, like, you know, some people want custom head badges for their bikes, but then people just knew me through probably Instagram and like, I know a lot of cycling people like think of me as a go-to for like a gift for whatever jewelry gift needs.
So if somebody has the need to buy some fancy jewelry and they happen to like cycling, you would be an excellent person to call because you're supporting. Maybe you wouldn't call. I don't know. Maybe you tweet at you. How do you order something? If somebody wanted to get something from you, how would they contact you?
Rhys.etsy.com.
Boom. That's easy. Yeah.
Or rhysmadejewelry.com also has the links, but yeah.
Rhys, it's been excellent talking to you, and we could probably stay on, I don't know if we're not really the phone, I suppose, stay on this internet conversation for an indefinite period of time. I know that Mark is going to kill me if this goes on for that much longer because he has to cut it down to like 15 minutes eventually.
All right. Well, yeah, I should probably go to bed.
Yeah, well. It's time to go to bed.
Stop clicking and keep talking.
I'm trying to get over to Zencaster and off of custom head badge art. Thank you for being on our show. So rhysmadejewelry.com if people want to check out your stuff. God damn it. Am I the only person who does that? Where did I get that from?
Everyone does it. It's a thing. Yeah. Rhys Made Jewelry.
rhysmadejewelry.com. RHYSMAY jewelry the usual way.com.
Correct.
Spectacular.
Awesome.
I'm very excited for our NYCROSS season.
Too.
Maybe before we get to the actual season, we can have another episode and we'll talk some more about cross racing and when it's like really actually cross season and it's not just barely spring.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been great talking to you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Amateur Hour CX. If you have liked these episodes, please consider supporting us on Patreon to help offset production costs. You can find the link for that in the show notes below. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at mwalling. Eric pretends he's the show account, which you can follow at Amateur Hour CX on Twitter. Please make sure to subscribe in your podcast player so you get our next episode in a couple weeks. Thanks. See you then.
I just got off the kicker because I escaped work early because of tornado warnings. So.
Oh yeah, we closed my office early because of tornado warnings. What the hell?
Yeah, I was working on Tuesdays. I work for a bakery and I run their farmers market booth. And it started pouring, and all the people who have vegetables were like, "Whatever, it's fine." And we were like, "Get the bread inside immediately!" So we were like running around with crates of bread. It was very exciting.